Elon Musk saves black homeless woman after millionaire fires her for serving him dinner. The word spread fast, like wildfire in the city streets and underground chat rooms. Tanya, the young chef, who cooked for Elon Musk himself, only to be fired on the spot, was now homeless. The scene was wild. Picture this, Tanya standing frozen, trembling hands clutching a silver tray, disbelief soaking her face like rain on cracked pavement. Elon's sharp gaze cutting through her like ice. The crowd in the fancy restaurant swallowing the silence that screamed louder than words. All because of one dinner. One terrible, stunning mistake that shattered her dreams right there in the bright, glittering dining room. Then, chaos exploded. Elon zipped out, his expensive coat whipping like a flag. Tanya's heart pounded so hard, it felt like it had burst through her ribs. She stumbled into the cold night, the city's blazing lights blurring through tears. No home, no job. Just the silence of the streets and the biting chill gnawing at her skin. Days blurred into restless nights. Hunger gnawed, strangers ignored. But then, in a narrow alley draped in shadow and flickering neon, smelled something unforgettable, something warm and sweet and real. Tanya followed her nose to a tiny old food stall, where an elderly woman moved with the grace of memories long held close. She was Rose, once a culinary queen in fancy kitchens, now a guardian of stories nobody cared to hear. Rose's eyes caught Tanya's, sharp and kind. "You got fire in your hands," she whispered. "Come cook with me. Let's show this city what we've got." And just like that, a spark flickered in Tanya's chest, a fragile hope wrapped in a rolling food truck painted with colors from their worlds. People flocked to the truck, drawn not just by the food, but by the stories. Tanya's and Rose's, dishes that told of blood, sweat, tears, and laughter. Words spilled in between bites. Their food truck became a beacon, a rebellion against the world that said no. Then, one gray afternoon, a familiar shadow loomed, Elon. His eyes scanned the crowd, curiosity pulling him closer. With every plate he tasted, something inside him writhed, a humbling reminder of the lives tangled in his choices. The whispers floated in the humid air as he stood there, unsure if he'd stumbled on redemption or regret. But beneath the growing crowds and clattering dishes, Tanya found something else. A secret Rose kept buried deep. A truth sharp enough to cut their new world to pieces. Or maybe, just maybe, stitch it back together stronger. The city hummed around them, voices rising, judgments whispered, hope flickering on the edge of ruin. Tanya's chest tightened. Was this the end? Or a new beginning? The truth hovered, waiting. What was Rose hiding? And would Tanya's trust survive the blast? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Tanya's heart raced. She stared at the crowd, waiting for an answer from Rose. The truth lingered in the air, thick and electric, like the storm clouds rolling in. Shadows played tricks on her mind. But then, Rose's expression changed. Panic flared in her eyes as if she had seen a ghost. Suddenly, a landline phone began ringing. It echoed through the small food truck, a jarring sound that shattered the warmth of their moment. The walls of their sanctuary felt like they were closing in. One of the patrons, a burly man in a leather jacket, noticed the shifting energy. He leaned in, tossing a suspicious glance toward Rose. "Answer it! Or don't you want to?" he taunted, fingers tapping against the counter. The crowd hushed, their laughter swallowed by tension. Rose hesitated. Her eyes darted to Tanya, searching for reassurance. "It's important," she murmured, voice trembling. Tanya nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of something bigger than food or friendship hovering between them. With shaking hands, Rose picked up the receiver. "Hello?" A pause, and her face turned pale. "What do you mean?" Her voice cracked, a shaky line of bravery crumbling beneath a rush of fear. The patrons shifted, worry etched on their faces, curiosity replacing laughter. And then Rose let out a gasp that stilled the air. No, not like this. She clutched the phone tightly, nails digging into her palm. "What do you want from me?" Tanya moved closer, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Rose, what's going on?" But Rose just shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. She slammed the phone down like it was a hot coal, her hands shaking. "Tell me," Tanya urged, each word heavy. Rose looked around at the crowd, anguish painted across her features. I thought I was free." Her voice was barely a whisper. "But they know who I am and what I did. And if they find me," the words hung in the air, like a promise of doom. "What do you mean?" Tanya's voice was sharp, cutting through the fog of confusion. "What did you do?" Suddenly, the crowd shifted, whispers rippling through the masses. "She's not who you think she is," a voice called from the back. "She's hiding a past." Gasps echoed as eyes turned to Rose, expectation writhing in the air. Tanya felt herself being squeezed in the grip of uncertainty, like a vice around her chest. "No, Rose, what's your past?" Tears streamed down Rose's face, the once warm glimmer in her eyes snuffed out by fear. "I was someone important," she began, her voice shaking. "But I made choices. Dangerous choices. I was part of the culinary elite, yes, but also part of something darker." The murmurs grew louder, confusion, disbelief. Tanya's mind raced. Important? Darker? What could be so urgent, so significant? "We need to leave," Rose cried, her voice breaking, "before they come for me." But Tanya hesitated, torn between loyalty and a growing fear. Who are they? The answers hung in the air, suffocating. Just then, a distant roar shattered the thick tension like glass breaking. A black SUV screeched to a halt at the end of the street. Doors slammed. Figures jumped out, angry, determined. The crowd gasped, fear cascading through like a wave. Tanya's heart dropped. "Run!" Rose yelled, her voice full of terror. But Tanya stood frozen, staring as the men approached, eyes wild with intent. Was this the beginning of the end, or the starting line to a race they couldn't escape? Everything was about to change, and the truth that hung like smoke in the air was just out of reach. The truth hovered, waiting. Tanya's heart raced as she caught Rose's eyes. Tension snapping like a taut wire. But before she could ask, the crowd roared. Elon was immersed in the food, his expression shifting from curiosity to raw emotion with every bite. This was their moment, and yet something in the air crackled with uncertainty. Tanya stirred the pot of gumbo, flavors swirling, deep and rich. The scent wafted through the crowd, enveloping them like a long-absent embrace. ... It was her creation, born from struggle and hope. But the weight of Rose's gaze bore down, heavy with a secret unspoken. Then, a commotion broke the rhythm. Someone shouted, "Look out!" The crowd parted, as if sucked back by a powerful wave. Tanya turned just in time to see a figure darting towards them, a dark blur in the streetlights. It slammed into the food truck like a freight train. The truck shook, metal screeching, and the smell of frying oil filled the air with panic. Tanya stumbled back, heart leaping into her throat. What the? The figure, a young man, collapsed on the pavement, panting, fear plastering his face. Blood trickled from his brow. "Get inside! They're coming!" he gasped, eyes wide with terror. A chilling wave washed over the crowd. Whispers turned to shouts. "Who's coming?" a voice yelled from the back. Panic spreading like wildfire. Tanya stepped closer, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she demanded, a lump rising in her throat. "They're hunting me!" His voice cracked, desperation spilling over as he looked over his shoulder like a cornered animal. "They think I have the list. You need to hide!" Rose stepped forward, her face pale. "What list?" The young man's breath came quick. "The list of names. People who've been wronged. People like you." He pointed a trembling finger at Tanya and Rose. "They'll do anything to silence us. They already took others. They're not just after me." Shock rippled through Tanya. Each word felt like a punch to the gut. She looked around, seeing the frightened faces of the crowd, confusion knitting their brows. What was he saying? Was he talking about them? About her? "Get in!" Rose shouted, urgency slicing through the chaos. The crowd surged toward the truck, a rush of bodies. Tanya hesitated, horror mixing with disbelief. The city streets felt like a trap as the shadows grew longer. But before she could process it all, the unmistakable sound of sirens sliced through the night. Red and blue lights painted the alley in a frantic dance. Tanya's heart dropped. She could feel the cold hands of dread gripping her. Then she saw it, a black van pulling up, exhaust clouds swirling like storm clouds. Figures piled out, authoritative strides, eyes scanning the street like hawks searching for prey. "We need to go," Rose shouted, pulling Tanya inside the truck. "Now!" The young man dove in, just as chaos erupted. The crowd started to scatter. Shouts of confusion mingled with the whirring of the motor. And Tanya's pulse thundered in her ears. Was this really happening? Something flickered in Rose's eyes. Fear and resolve mingled in a heady potion. "I never wanted this life for you, Tanya," she murmured, pressing her hand against Tanya's arm. "We can't let them take what we've built." The tension thickened like smoke in the air. A siren wailed nearby, angering the already unsettled night. What did Rose really know? What had her past entangled in this mess? The sirens drew closer, Breaths quickened and dread seeped in. Red lights flashed against the food truck. Were they truly safe? Was this the end of their dream? Or just the beginning of a nightmare? The truth lay below the surface, waiting to erupt like a storm. In that moment, Tanya's world tilted. What was real? What was a lie? And how could the taste of freedom turn bitter in an instant? The air buzzed with questions left unanswered, and the only certainty that remained was uncertainty, lurking just beyond the vanishing shadows. The sirens grew louder, a monstrous heartbeat echoing down the street. Tanya's breath quickened, her pulse a frantic drum. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to drown out the panic swirling around her. But the moment she opened them, there was Rose, her expression twisted in fear and resolve, the kind of fear that stirred something deep inside Tanya. Then, without warning, the back door of the food truck swung wide open. In the fray, a figure rushed in, tall, shadowed, adrenaline coursing through him. It was a man she'd never seen before, hair slicked back, eyes wild with urgency. "Get out, now!" he shouted. "Who are you?" Tanya gasped, fear pooling in her stomach. "They found me! We're not safe!" The man turned to Rose, locking eyes with her. "We need her out of here. She can't be seen." There was desperation in his voice, the kind that demanded action. Rose's face went pale, the color draining like ink spilled on a page. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a sound like thunder rattled the food truck. The sirens were closer now, closer than they'd ever been. Tension wrapped around them like barbed wire. "They're here!" The man shoved Tanya and Rose toward the front. But as they jostled forward, a shadow disappeared behind memory. Tanya froze. "Rose, do you know him?" Tanya's voice trembled, confused. Suddenly, the man's face shifted, morphing into something familiar. "Tanya, you don't understand! I can't!" Then it hit her like a bucket of ice water. You were at the restaurant! You were the chef under Elon! The truth burned in her chest, a wave of recognition crashing down. You were part of the team, the elite. No. He shook his head, eyes wide. Not just any team. I was involved in something way worse. You don't know. We thought we were just cooking, but we were feeding them information, secrets. Tanya's heart raced, hands trembling. Feeding who? What have you done? Listen. He grabbed her shoulders, fear igniting his eyes. Elon, he's in on it. It's a game of power and influence, and you got too close. We never meant for it to escalate this way. Everything flipped. The warmth she felt toward Rose, toward her dreams of freedom, they twisted into knots of betrayal. What do you mean? You both knew? This was all a setup? Rose flinched, words snatched from her throat. No, Tanya, it's complicated. Complicated? Tanya yelled, panic surging like a tide. I lost everything for both of you. I'm homeless because of him, because of you. Not everything, the man interjected, urgency squirming in his voice. They want you for a reason. You're part of the list, Tanya. The one we're trying to protect. Don't you see? You must trust me. If they find out you know, it will be over. Trust? You expect me to trust a stranger who's screaming about a list? Tanya recoiled, the dreadful weight of betrayal pressing down on her. You think this is supposed to make sense? The van's door slammed shut outside, a powerful thud that sent vibrations sparking through the truck. Voices erupted, demanding, searching. It filled the air with chaos, drowning out Tanya's thoughts. But then, amidst the rising tide of fear, Rose gave Tanya a look, one that spoke louder than words. The weight of their shared history pressed against them, a burden heavy with secrets. Tell her, Rose's voice broke, trembling under pressure. Tell her the rest. There's something you don't know. At that moment, a figure stepped into the low light, stone-faced, eyes glinting like steel. It was ELON, moving with purpose. Too late to run. He locked eyes with Tanya, and a cold shiver crawled down her spine. We're all in this together, whether you like it or not. The truth hung heavy, suffocating their breaths, transformation swirling like dust around them. What did he mean? What had they done? And what dark entanglements lurked just beyond the edges of their understanding? Tanya's heart raced in her chest as the shadows deepened. Was this the moment everything unraveled, or were they just at the starting point of a darker journey? The truth hovered, waiting, and just as it seemed like time itself held its breath, the unexpected happened. A crack pierced the atmosphere, a scream sharp and shrill, slicing through the chatter of the crowd. A woman stumbled back, clutching her chest, eyes wide like saucers. "Somebody call an ambulance!" The words erupted from her mouth, raw with panic. Tanya froze, heart thudding in her ears. She turned, fear gripping her insides. Rose's hands clasped the counter of the food truck, eyes locked on the scene unfolding. "I'll check!" Tanya yelled, her legs propelling her forward before reason caught up. The crowd parted like the sea, whispers swirling around her. "What's happening? Is she okay?" Elon stood still, his posture tense, every inch of him screaming uncertainty. The woman on the ground gasped for air, fingers twitching, her face pale. Tanya knelt beside her, urgency driving her forward. "Stay with me. What's your name?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I can't breathe," the woman wheezed, a hand clutching at her throat as her eyes darted around, searching for hope. Just then, a police car whirred around the corner, lights flashing, slicing through the evening gloom. The world blurred, and Tanya felt time skidding to a halt. She could hear Rose behind her, quietly murmuring prayers under her breath. The sirens wailed louder, drowning everything else as paramedics stepped out, rushing to the woman. Elon stepped closer, eyes wide, scanning the scene. Tanya caught his gaze. Something flickered there. Was it regret? Empathy? She couldn't tell. She was too wrapped up in the chaos. But then, in a moment of utter clarity, something shifted in the air. The crowd gasped again. The woman began to shudder, her face twisting like she was caught in a whirlwind of agony. Then it happened. Another shout rang out from the back of the crowd. "She's her sister." A man began pushing through, desperation taking the place of decorum. His face twisted in fear as he reached the fallen woman, slipping between people like water breaking through a dam. "Somebody get her a damn inhaler! I know she has one!" Tanya's breath caught in her throat. The truth hit like a thunderbolt. This stranger wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was part of a story tangled with lives that it had seemed were only passing through. The man dropped beside her, and in an instant, he pulled an inhaler from his pocket. "Breathe, Sarah!" "Come on," he urged, desperately shoving the device against her lips. The crowd held its breath, silence pressing down like a weight. The paramedics arrived just in time, helping Sarah, pulling her back from an edge they all felt hovering. But as they worked, Tanya's heart raced for another reason. She glimpsed something in the distance. Rose's expression. It had changed, twisting into something darker, something burdened. What was she hiding? The secret that had been buried was rising, threatening to erupt. Rose's lips moved, but her voice was lost in the noise. Tanya's chest tightened as her eyes darted back and forth between ELON, the commotion, and Rose's fearful gaze. What was the truth lurking just beneath the surface? Would this explosion of chaos shatter their fragile community too? Tanya knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change, and the questions loomed larger than ever. What load was Rose carrying? Would the truth tear everything they built apart? Tanya's pulse raced as she watched Elon wander closer. She crowded between the sizzling spatula and the bubbling pots, trying to catch her breath amid the clamor. This was the moment she dreamed of, until it wasn't. Anxiety clawed at her throat. What would she say? What would he say? Then, as if fate worked in slow motion, she caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Her heart sank. Would he see her as a failure? Or worse, as a reminder of his colossal mistake? But then, just as she braced herself for confrontation, a loud crash echoed through the crowd, slicing through the chatter. Eyes turned, gasps popped like balloons. A man, face twisted in rage, careened through the throng, knocking over tables. It was chaos, a whirlwind of shouting, confusion, and spilled food. "Elon, get down!" Tanya shouted, instinctively stepping in front of him, her hands raised. The man's eyes blazed wild with anger, and the air grew thick with tension. And then, just as abruptly, something in the man's demeanor shifted. His rage morphed into pure desperation. "You think you can play God? Sam, MUSK? You think you're above us all?" he screamed, pointing a finger so accusatory it felt like fire cutting through the night. The crowd held its breath. Tanya felt a lump rise, an ugly twist of fear and confusion. Was this a protest? A personal vendetta? The man's anguish echoed deep, stirring memories of her own struggles. "Stop, please!" Tanya shouted, advancing cautiously. "You don't need to do this. We want to talk." The words tumbled out, dripping with empathy. But the man wasn't listening. Instead, he lunged forward, pulling something metallic from his pocket. "A knife!" The crowd gasped, a wave of panic washing over them. Elon stepped back, eyes wide, yet rooted. Tanya instinctively moved closer, driven by an adrenalina-fueled instinto para protegerle, even cuando como un censo le crimaba de correr. "No", giró, "el corazón pertenece contra su carga de repies como un pájaro ganadero desesperado para escapar". En el momento siguiente arrumpió un flash de luz. ¡Pah! El sonido ricochó, los vientos heridos, clamás y surgió de la cena franticamente, heart leaping when she saw the man crumple to the ground. A woman's voice screamed, "Rose!" But it wasn't Rose who emerged from the crowd. It was a figure she didn't expect, ELON. "What did you do?" Tanya gasped. But her voice cracked, horror gripping her. ELON's expression twisted, stricken and pale. "I didn't mean to," he stammered, trembling hands stained. Blood pooled around the collapsing man, shadows darkening the pavement like ink pouring from an open bottle. The crowd erupted. Some ran, some recorded on their phones, a chaos of disbelief. Tanya felt the walls closing in. What just happened? She turned to Rose, frantically seeking answers. But Rose's eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and something else. Sorrow, regret. "It's not what you think," Rose whispered. "There's so much you don't know about him, about me." Tanya's heart stuttered, a cold wind tearing through her spirit. What was hidden? What had she missed? And then, as the lights around them dimmed, her world spun, confusion washing over her all at once. Would she ever truly know who ELON was? Or who Rose really was? The truth hung in the air, heavy and potent. The moment changed everything, and yet the heart of the mystery still lay just beyond her grasp. What lay underneath the surface of their lives, waiting to be uncovered? The truth hovered, waiting. Rose glanced at Tanya, her face tense, eyes shimmering with secrets held too long. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice low, almost swallowed by the noise around them. Before Tanya could respond, a strange sound cut through the lively chatter, a loud bang like thunder on a sunny day. The crowd jolted, nervous laughter replaced by uneasy whispers. Someone screamed. All heads turned toward the sound. A man burst into the scene, his clothes tattered, eyes wild. "Get down!" he shouted, and the world shrank. It was chaotic. People ducked for cover, plates of food toppled. The vibrant food truck shook like it was caught in an earthquake. Tanya's heart raced. Was this a robbery? Her mind flashed to the streets she had slept on, the helplessness clawing at her. She clutched Rose's arm, both of them crouching behind the truck's engine block, hidden but listening, shaking in a whirlwind of panic. But then, it wasn't just chaos, it was tragedy unfolding. The man, panicked and desperate, pulled something from his coat, a gun. The metallic glint sliced through the night. Tanya's breath hitched. This was real. This was danger. "Please don't!" she shouted, her voice trembling. The man turned, shock mixed with anger flooding his face. And then, out of the corner of her eye, something stirred in Rose. A flicker of recognition. "Marcus?" Rose said, her voice a whisper, but it crashed through the clamor like thunder. "Rose?" The man's voice cracked, hesitant. Confusion mingled with recognition. Tanya's stomach dropped. "You know him?" Rose stood, resolved now, her usual calmness replaced with urgency. "No! Get back! You don't want to do this!" But it was too late. The moment stretched between them, time suspended like fog. Everyone watched, breaths held, as the truth erupted in the silence. Rose and Marcus were tied together in ways Tanya never imagined. Friends, lovers, anguished choices from a past hidden under layers of shame. "Let's just talk," Rose called, her eyes pleading. But Marcus shook his head, a man broken by a hard world. "I didn't think you'd want to see me again," he spat, memories boiling beneath his skin. Desperation twisted his features. "Not after what you did. Not after I lost everything because of you." Tanya glanced back and forth. The electricity crackled. This wasn't just a man desperate for help. This was a wound opening, spilling secrets that could drown them all. Rose's face crumpled, lips trembling. "I never meant to hurt you," she pleaded, but the words were desperate and thin. "I thought if I left, you could find a way out." Tanya felt a rush of heat in her cheeks. Who was Rose really? She had been so focused on her own journey that she hadn't glimpsed the weight Rose carried. The stories of pain and survival had formed a bond, but now it felt like a fragile glass, one wrong move away from shattering. Marcus's grip tightened on the gun, fear blending with rage. The crowd was frozen, a living audience to a nightmare unfolding. Would he pull the trigger? Would tomorrow become today's grim memory? Tanya stepped forward, heart pounding. "Please, just put it down," she urged, eyes locked with Marcus's. The world narrowed to that moment. "You don't want to do this. We can help you." But the silence wrapped tightly around them, and the truth felt heavy as a stone. What was going to break? The man? Rose? Or perhaps Tanya herself? In that swirling chaos of pain, anger, and broken bonds, something shifted, and it felt like the weight of it all might bring everything crashing down. Tanya's pulse raced as she watched Elon wander closer. She crowded between the sizzling spatula and the bubbling pots, trying to catch her breath amid the clamor. This was the moment she dreamed of. Until it wasn't. Anxiety clawed at her throat. What would she say? What would he say? Then, as if fate worked in slow motion, she caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Her heart sank. Would he see her as a failure, or worse, as a reminder of his colossal mistake? But then, just as she braced herself for confrontation, a loud crash echoed through the crowd, slicing through the chatter. Eyes turned. Gasps popped like balloons. A man, face twisted in rage, careened through the throng, knocking over tables. It was chaos, a whirlwind of shouting, confusion, and spilled food. "Elon, get down!" Tanya shouted, instinctively stepping in front of him, her hands raised. The man's eyes blazed wild with anger, and the air grew thick with tension. And then, just as abruptly, something in the man's demeanor shifted. His rage morphed into pure desperation. "You think you can play God, Musk? You think you're above us all?" he screamed, pointing a finger so accusatory it felt like fire cutting through the night. The crowd held its breath. Tanya felt a lump rise, an ugly twist of fear and confusion. Was this a protest? A personal vendetta? The man's anguish echoed deep, stirring memories of her own struggles. "Stop! Please!" Tanya shouted, advancing cautiously. "You don't need to do this! We want to talk!" The words tumbled out, dripping with empathy. But the man wasn't listening. Instead, he lunged forward, pulling something metallic from his pocket. A knife! The crowd gasped, a wave of panic washing over them. Elon stepped back, eyes wide, yet rooted. Tanya instinctively moved closer, driven by an adrenaline-fueled instinct to protect him, even when common sense screamed to run. "No!" she cried, heart racing, pulse pounding against her ribcage like a caged bird desperate to escape. In the split second that followed, a blinding flash erupted. A gunshot. Fear rooted Tanya in place. The sound ricocheted, bodies flinched, cries erupted. She turned, frantically scanning the street, heart leaping when she saw the man crumple to the ground. A woman's voice screamed, "Rose!" But it wasn't Rose who emerged from the crowd. It was a figure she didn't expect. "Elon, what did you do?" Tanya gasped, but her voice cracked, horror gripping her. Elon's expression twisted, stricken and pale. "I didn't mean to," he stammered, trembling hands stained. Blood pooled around the collapsing man, shadows darkening the pavement like ink pouring from an open bottle. The crowd erupted. Some ran, some recorded on their phones, a chaos of disbelief. Tanya felt the walls closing in. What just happened? She turned to Rose, frantically seeking answers, but Rose's eyes were wide. A mixture of fear and something else, sorrow, regret. "It's not what you think," Rose whispered. "There's so much you don't know about him, about me." Tanya's heart stuttered, a cold wind tearing through her spirit. What was hidden? What had she missed? And then, as the lights around them dimmed, her world spun, confusion washing over her all at once. Would she ever truly know who Elon was? Or who Rose really was? The truth hung in the air, heavy and potent. The moment changed everything, and yet the heart of the mystery still lay just beyond her grasp. What lay underneath the surface of their lives, waiting to be uncovered? Tanya felt the air thicken with tension as she watched the man, struggling for breath, eyes wide in shock. But just then, as he gasped for air, something miraculous happened. The sound of a phone rang out, slicing through the chaos. It pulsed with urgency, demanding attention. Tanya blinked. It was the stranger in the crowd, Marcus. His phone! He dug into his pocket, trembling as his fingers fumbled. The screen lit up, and Tanya's heart dropped. It could be important. Could it be about the secrets, the list he had mentioned earlier? "Answer it!" Tanya shouted, desperation fueling her urgency. "Please!" But Marcus stood frozen, staring down at the screen, his face draining of color. Then, instinctively, he raised it to his ear. "Hello?" His voice cracked. Tanya held her breath, the world narrowing again. The crowd pulsed with whispers, everyone watching. Something monumental was about to unfold. A voice echoed back, a voice she recognized. "Marcus, you can't trust them. They're coming. It's not safe." "What do you mean?" Marcus demanded, breathless. "Who's coming? Are they after me?" His fear clawed through the air like a wild beast. "Not just you. The list. It's all a trap." The urgency wrapped around them, shattering moments like broken glass. "You need to protect Rose. She's in danger." Tanya's eyes widened. Rose? The weight of it all shifted, the air thinned. What was going on? What was Rose hiding? In that moment, out of nowhere, the sirens erupted again, piercing the night, blending with murmurs of concern. The once vibrant sounds of the crowd turned to chaotic whispers. Everything moved at warp speed. Tanya glanced at Rose. There was understanding in her eyes that hadn't existed before. "They know," Rose whispered. "They've been watching. I thought I escaped." What do you mean, watching? Tanya's heart raced, the truth unfurling like a dark banner. And then a scream pierced the night, a woman's voice carrying terror, pointing at something in the distance. There they are! They're back! Suddenly a line of black SUVs swarmed the street, stopping short, dust swirling up like a storm. Men in suits poured out, intent on purpose, eyes scanning the crowd with laser focus. "Run!" Marcus shouted. Panic etched across his features as he stumbled back. But Rose stood, rooted. Every ounce of strength gone. "I can't leave. Not now." Her voice trembled, crackling under pressure. "Why not?" Tanya's voice cracked, the rising tide of fear strangling her. "You need to tell me what's going on." But before Rose could speak, one of the imposing figures approached. His gaze fixated on her, a twisted smirk surfacing. "I've been waiting for this moment." It felt like the world around them exploded. Everything came crashing down. The lies, the secrets woven tight like threads in a tapestry. Who were they really? What had they done to each other and themselves? The truth poured out like an avalanche, everything teetering on the brink of collapse. What lay buried beneath the surface screamed, waiting for the right moment to break free. Just as the tension reached a fever pitch, a blinding light emerged, illuminating the night, illuminating hopes, fears, and the eerie truth that lingered, cloaked in shadows just beyond reach. The moment shifted again, and Tanya's heart raced as uncertainty gripped her. Where did they go from here? Would they survive? The truth hung like a storm cloud, heavy and electric, waiting to burst. The truth hung like a storm cloud, heavy and electric, waiting to burst. As the black SUVs rolled up, tension sliced through the air. The men in suits fanned out, faces impassive. Their eyes scanned the crowd, unyielding. It felt like all hope flickered in the shadows. And yet there was Rose, her body rigid, eyes locked onto Marcus as time slowed. Then as the tension reached its peak, a voice rang out from the crowd, sharp and clear. "I can't let her get away." Everyone turned. A figure burst through the throng, a young woman, breathless and frantic, hair flying. "Kylie?" Tanya blinked, recognition hitting hard. It was her childhood friend, someone she'd thought had vanished from her life. "Please, you have to listen to me." Kylie gasped, shoving her way to the front. But all eyes were on Rose. "She's not who you think she is." "What?" Tanya's heart raced, confusion cloaking her like a shroud. "Rose, she's involved." Kylie screamed, the accusation hanging over them like a rain cloud, ready to pour. Rose turned, fury igniting in her expression. "You don't know what you're talking about, Kylie." "No?" Kylie shot back, stepping closer, fire in her eyes. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think I wouldn't connect the dots?" She pointed an accusing finger, breath hitching. "You and those deals, the secrets, the money, it was you!" Stunned silence fell. The crowd's whispers morphed into gasps, shock rippling through like a wave. Tanya's chest tightened. It couldn't be. "Stop!" Tanya yelled, stepping in front of Rose, trying to shield her from the accusations. "What do you mean, Kylie?" Kylie's eyes flicked to her, terror lingering behind them. She knew. She was part of it. The cooking thing, it was a cover. They used her. "No!" Rose shouted, anguish crackling in her voice. "That's not true!" But the doubt settled like a stone inside Tanya. Rose had always been careful about her past, but here it was, all unspooled in front of them, every secret threatening to unravel. "Is this true?" Tanya asked, her voice quivering. What deals? The air crackled with uncertainty. I thought I could protect you, Rose whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted you pulled into this. Pulled into what? Tanya demanded, shaking her head. Before Rose could respond, the men in suits moved closer. Tension pulsed, enveloping them all. One of the men stepped forward, eyes steady on Rose. You didn't think we'd forget, did you? Suddenly, chaos erupted. Someone from the crowd lunged forward, screaming, You can't silence her! A scuffle broke out, hands flailing, screams mingling with shouts. Someone knocked over a table. Food and drinks tumbled, splattering the pavement. The vibrant world of their food truck marred by panic. In the chaos, everything shifted. Tanya felt a push behind her. She turned, and it was Marcus, visibly shaken, his eyes frantic. You have to trust me! Rose is hiding something that could destroy everything! At that moment, a gunshot rang out. Tanya's heart plummeted. Time froze, the world narrowing into a dark tunnel. No, the crowd gasped, voices raised in panic. But then they turned, all eyes wide. It wasn't the chaos, but Elon, standing still, expression dark and distant. I didn't mean to, he shouted, hands up, dangerous confusion etched on his face. Blood pooled at his feet, a stark contrast to the colorful chaos just moments ago. The shock radiated like waves. Who was the shooter? Was he a pawn all along? And then, just as everything threatened to spiral into madness, Rose turned on Elon, a wild look in her eyes. You knew this would happen! Elon staggered back, guilt twisting his features. I didn't! But the truth crashed down like thunder. Everything Tanya had believed flipped. Nothing was what it seemed. The world unraveled around them, and in that moment, as breaths caught and hearts raced, the looming darkness whispered threats that loomed large. What had Rose really been a part of? And who had truly orchestrated the chaos they found themselves in? A tight knot formed in Tanya's gut as the shadows crept closer. The truth teetering on the edge of exposure. Like an impending storm, she felt trapped in the eye of it all. And for the first time, doubt snaked its way into her heart. Who could she trust now? What would happen next? Tension hung thick in the air as the world held its breath. The sight of blood pooling on the pavement brought every heart to a standstill. Tanya's stomach churned. This was a nightmare. Elon stood, shock stark across his features, while Rose trembled, the weight of secrets crashing down around them. You don't understand, she screamed at Kylie, her voice piercing through the chaos. I was trying to protect everyone. Protect them? Kylie's voice cracked, fueled by anger and disbelief. You put us all in danger. We could have died. The crowd murmured, a wave of confused whispers filling the space. Each bystander wrestled with their own fear, eyes flitting between the chaos and the bloodied man on the ground. It was chaotic, raw, and unforgiving. Stop! Just stop! Tanya shouted, stepping between them, the weight of the moment folding around her like a shroud. She turned to both women, desperate for clarity. What deal? What were you involved in? In that instant, clarity hit harder than any punch. Rose stammered as shadows of guilt morphed across her face. I thought I could shield you, but I didn't realize they were still watching. Her voice faltered, and Tanya felt a deep pang of betrayal creep into her heart. Just then, the men in suits closed in, eyes cold and watchful. "Enough of this," one of them growled, an edge to his voice that sent chills racing down Tanya's spine. "Let us go," Marcus shouted, panicking. "She's not involved in this! You can't do this!" "Can't we?" Another man retorted coolly, a haunting glint in his eye. "She's a liability now, and liabilities get eliminated." The panic surged anew, washing over Tanya like a tidal wave. "No! You can't take her!" She leaped forward, but Rose caught her arm, fear dancing in her eyes. "Get out!" Rose pleaded. "You have to run!" But Tanya refused to move. "I can't just leave you!" The ground felt like it shook beneath them, and in that moment of chaos, Rose turned to everyone and gasped, "If you want to save yourselves, you'll have to trust me." Tanya's gut twisted. "Trust you? After everything?" But the desperation in Rose's eyes was undeniable. Outside, sirens wailed louder, red and blue lights flashing like manic fireflies, illuminating their faces. The moment drew nearer to an inevitable clash. The crowd surged. Whispers escalated into terrifying shouts. People were pushed back, huddling together, fear gripping them all. "Take her!" one of the men shouted, charging towards Rose. The crowd erupted in chaos, bodies pulling together as they fought to protect each other. A split-second reaction propelled Tanya toward Rose, a wild instinct. "Don't! You can't!" But the suit grabbed her wrist, dragging her away from her friend. Tanya struggled, her heart pounding in her ears. Suddenly, Rose shot forward, wild determination lighting her features. "I have the information," she shouted, voice rising above the tumult. "Release them! Let them go, and I'll give you everything!" Everything froze, one heartbeat then another. Everything was on the edge, teetering toward oblivion. The faces of the crowd turned from fear to hope, and everyone was listening. "Rose!" Tanya gasped, shocked. But Rose's eyes shone brightly, clarity piercing through the chaos. "I was part of something dark, something I thought I could escape. But I can help. We can bring it down together. Just trust me." Tanya's heart ached, devastated, yet desperate. This was it. The moment everything pivoted. The man's grip on Tanya loosened, and she watched as the tension in the air shifted. Hope flickered, fragile, like a candle caught in the wind. "We'll listen," the man said, a hesitant edge to his voice. Rose held her breath, trembling, and Tanya felt raw energy coursing through her, an electric buzz igniting between them. The crowd watched in awe as something shifted, not just between Rose and the men, but among all of them. The truth hung in the air, heavy yet searching, waiting for someone to take a leap to change everything. Then, as if pulled from a dream, the first siren faded into a distant memory, replaced by a new sense of possibility. And as they moved toward that fragile line between dread and redemption, Tanya thought, this was the moment to choose. She took a step forward, heart racing, defying the darkness closing in. This was their chance, a spark igniting against the shadows, waiting to explode. But then, in the crawl, It wasn't over yet. Shadows carved new paths. Hidden stories lingered in the depths, waiting. Where would this lead? Stay close. The truth might just lead somewhere unexpected. And as the night unfolded, the lingering truth reminded them all that they weren't safe just yet. Listen up, everyone. You have to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss the exclusive stories we're diving into next. Smash that like button now. It feeds the algorithm. And flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next? Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this wild ending. Let's keep this community alive. You're all amazing.